The Talksport Fan Network.
The ultimate on-demand destination for the UK's best fan-led football podcasts.
Want authentic supporter insight on all things Bournemouth? Follow Up the Cherries in all departments on the Talksport Fan Network.
Club-dedicated content created by the fans, for the fans.
Search Talksport Fan Network.
Hello, Cherries fans, and welcome to another Dean Court Social here on Up the Cherries. Now, before we get going, hit like, hit subscribe, hit the bell button below. It helps this channel to grow. Also, a big thank you to our two sponsors. Firstly, Touchpoint Telecoms at touchpointtelecoms.co.uk. If you need your phones fixing from Morecambe to Marlborough and everywhere in between, get in contact with Mark and the team. There we are. That rhymes, that does. That's quite impressive. And also, Dental on the Banks at dentalonthebanks.co.uk. If you need your teeth sorted, if they're a bit wonky and stuff, go there, dentalonthebanks.co.uk, and they'll sort them out for you. So there we go. There we are. So, I tell you what, let's get stuck into it. Mr. Matthew Harrison, how you doing, Matt?
Yeah, all good. Looking forward to previewing this City game. It's going to be an interesting one. Definitely.
Yep, most definitely. And we're in November already when this game kicks off. So, yes, getting chilly. The nights have drawn in. But the Cherries are still top of the tree. Well, only with Arsenal above us. After beating Nottingham Forest 2-0. We won't speak too much about it because, of course, there is tons and tons and tons of stuff on here, which I think you should go and check. Cherry slaps and my reaction afterwards, where I was high-fiving a lot of people and Mr. Dorr was running away from me. But, Matt, what did you make of the game?
Yeah, another good win. I thought that, Forest would have performed a little bit better in the first half from what I saw in the Europa League game the previous Thursday night. But yeah, we were able to do the damage in the first half. Second half, I thought Forest come out a little bit more direct, a little bit more Sean Dyche, should we say. But I think, we had enough in the tank to see it out. And again, another good 3 points on the board. To sit second at the end of, October into November is lovely. It's great to see. I must admit, starting to get a little bit excited now. Very, very excited about this City game. I know we've never picked up a point, have we, at the Etihad? So, I think this could be our time.
100%. And City's season so far will be seen by their standards. And if we take last season out of the equation as well, as pretty disappointing. But it's a step up from last year, in my honest opinion, for them. They've been beaten 3 times so far this season, most recently against Villa last weekend. What do you make of their season so far?
Well, when you look, before we touch on them very quickly, when you look at the league table, obviously, I think if you're an Arsenal fan, you must be saying it's this year or never, surely, because obviously Liverpool are now starting to slip up. City, like you've just said, have probably had a underwhelming start to their season. So Yeah, I mean, when you look across their
Mhm.
defeats, they were defeated opening day of the season, I think, if I remember rightly, against Tottenham,
Yes.
2-0. Then they were defeated to Brighton when they went down to Brighton. I think they went 1-0 up. And then they lost the game right at the death. I think it was a penalty, I think, but Brighton were awarded, I think, and they
Mhm.
got the winner right at the death of that one. And now, obviously, Villa. I thought Villa was quite an interesting game, actually, which I'll touch on a little bit more. But yeah, when you look at it, currently sitting fifth with 16 points, after 9 games, yeah, they will say it's a bit underwhelming. But when you look at the goals they've scored 17 goals this season, and
Yep.
11 of them are from Haaland. So, and
It's
as it is with every game, no matter how many goals Haaland or the team has scored, I'm sure that Andoni will have his plan to mark him out of the game. So, and they've conceded 7 goals as well. There can be defensive lapses there, which I think is going to be very, very important
Mhm.
for Bournemouth to capitalise on. And when you see the form of Krupi at the minute, if there's any defensive lapses in that City defence, I'm sure Pep is warning those players that someone of Krupi's talent, can nip in there and punish them. So, the Spurs defeat. When you go back to that, was that exposing some, possible early season rust? Was that, it's possibly exposing that it might be a slight uphill struggle for him this season? You look at Brighton, like I say, they surrendered a lead, and conceded the late winner. Was that, a bit of lapse in maybe game management from Pep? Who knows? I mean, that'd be interesting to hear, from a City fan's perspective on that one. And then the Villa defeat. That's you've highlighted the struggles against a compact side that counter attack. And watching back at the highlights at that, and I only saw the highlights, but from what I saw in the highlights there, I thought really made me feel that Bournemouth have possibly got a real chance of going up to the Etihad and causing some problems this time. But then again, Pepper's tried to counteract against some of the troubles this season. He's actually experimented with a formation of 4-2-2-2, following some of the setbacks earlier on in the season. So moving away from his traditional 4-3-3 formation. And that's the idea of that apparently is for them to be able to create some more vertical passing, and overloading in the central areas of the pitch. So yeah, it's been quite interesting to see how he's tried to adapt, because obviously the league's changing all the time.
Yeah.
So, and when you look at that top four, Bournemouth and Sunderland being in that top four is not your normal kind of top four race for Europe, is it? In all honesty, no disrespect to ourselves in Sunderland. So I think Pep is trying to adjust to how the league's changing. And he's got a great bunch of players there. We all know that, and they can adjust and change and take on different formations. So he's adapting the side to try and be title challengers again from an outsider looking in. He's also tweaked how they press as well. So
Yeah.
focusing on zonal traps and focusing and forcing opponents, wide as well. So, I think it might be a little bit of evolution going on there.
Mhm.
Who knows? But that's just from seeing highlights this season and things that you kind of read up on and stuff like that. So yeah, like you say, underwhelming start, but you can't really ever write them off completely.
Well, they have thumped some teams already. The opening day of the season actually was actually against Wolves. The
That's
first
right.
home game was against Spurs,
Yeah,
who they beat 4-0 at Molineux. Hey, that's to be expected. They also thumped Burnley 5-1. Manchester United, their local rivals, of course, 3-0. So they are dangerous, and Everton they beat 2-0 as well. Um, they are still dangerous, but they're able to be got at. Um, let's look at their three key players, though, at the Etihad. And I
Yeah.
know, well, everybody can talk about Haaland and whoever, but I'm sure you probably got some others.
Well, actually, no. Haaland is one of them.
Go
Yeah,
on.
Haaland's always got to be one of you
Yeah.
know, the ones to watch because he's, what he can do. He
Yeah.
is a phenomenal striker. Like I said a little bit earlier, 11 goals this season. Currently top scorer in in the Premier League this year. And he is City's primary goal threat, isn't he?
Yeah.
Yes, they do have goals coming from other areas. There's plenty of players we can name. Foden, um, Silva in the midfield. He's very, very creative. There's quite a few players that I could have picked, but I've gone for three. Three of these players that I've picked here in Rodri being another one. If he's fit, he's a doubt still for to play us, but if he does, he's going to be key. And also, is it Mateus Nunes?
Yes.
I think he's also a very interesting one. But yeah, going back to Haaland, you putting balls in the box. He's a threat. I mean, whoever Andoni picks to face City in terms of centre back partnership. Obviously, Milo Sakovic coming last week. So whoever partners with Senesi, I'm sure there'd be some double marking up on Haaland to keep him quiet. But he thrives on through balls, crosses, quick transitions. We know what he can do. He stretches defenses. From with his movement, efficiency in terms of finishing is something else. And like I've mentioned, players like Foden, Silva, he allows them space for them to create and get involved in goal scoring as well. So, I think sometimes everyone sees him as this goal machine, but he does have other aspects to his game as well, which opens things up for other players. Rodri, we know what Rodri brings them.
Oh yeah.
Man City are a much better side, in my opinion, with Rodri in it. Like I said, he is a doubt, but if he does come in, he's going to be a massive key man for them. He is the heartbeat of that midfield for City. The possession game, he directs, the tempo, he breaks up the opposition's attack. He is a massive player for him. And, I'm hoping, fingers crossed he'll be out the side still. But, if he does come in, he's going to be absolutely vital. He shields the back line, gives the defense support. His build up play and progressive passing is fantastic. He's won the Ballon d'Or, isn't he? I mean, who was the last midfielder before him to win the Ballon d'Or?
Well,
Um,
exactly. He makes them tick, doesn't he? He
yeah,
really does make them tick. And last season really was because they lost Rodri from their side. He was injured majority of the season, and therefore, I think that kind of put the skids on them. So yeah, I'm with you. Okay, you always want to see the best players in the world. Majority of the time, but I'd rather not see him on Sunday.
yeah, no, totally. And another interesting thing as well, which I wasn't too aware until the Villa game, I think,
Mhm.
Mateus Nunes being converted into a right back, which is quite
Mm.
an interesting one.
Yeah,
So he's recently been converted to that role, and I think Pep's actually praised him by saying that he can become a world class right back, which is quite interesting.
mm.
Um, in this day and age, I mean, Bournemouth fans, Bournemouth fans from a long time ago remember, the likes of Mel Machin converting players like Coxey from midfield to centre back and Krista Warren from
Yeah.
a striker eventually to left back. Sometimes you do have to do that, but you see that quite rarely, I think, in the Premier
Mm.
League. I know obviously Eddie Howe's done it with Joel Linton, but it's not something you see too often in the Premier League. So it's quite an interesting one. So yeah, uh, energy. Energy and his pressing intensity from right back is fantastic. So in
Yeah.
terms of an attacking threat from fullbacks going forward, we're going to really have to keep an eye on him as well. And his defensive awareness it seems to have been really good. I thought against Villa in the highlights that I saw. So yeah, an interesting one. I didn't expect to be highlighting him as one of my 3 players to watch. And being converted into the right back spot. So Pep's obviously seen something in him there that's obviously proven to be an asset for him at the minute.
Wow. Of course, we've never got a point at the Etihad. It's a daunting place to go majority of the time. However, if we are going to beat Manchester City or get a result up at the Etihad, surely it is this season. And do we, thinking out loud here, do we try and dictate our style on Manchester City because it's good enough, we're good enough now? Or do we still have to counteract them? How do we overcome Man City?
I think a bit of both of what you're saying there. I think Andoni's style is so implemented into that team that I don't think it's going to change it too much. I suppose cautious. I suppose we'd be a bit more cautious when they're on the attack and when we haven't got the ball.
Yeah.
But in terms of when we got the ball, I think we're just going to be the same aggressive high press and counter attack. When you look at the win probability, I was a little bit shocked at the win probability actually, because I've seen a win probability of 64% for City.
Yeah.
And I think it's 16.1 for Bournemouth with a 19.9 chance of a draw, which I thought with Bournemouth's form currently and the way we've played, I thought that could have been a little bit higher. Yes, I do understand we're the away side. Traditionally, the away side has a less chance of winning. I do understand that, but I thought the win probability for Bournemouth might have been a little bit higher. But for me, I think whoever plays on the wings, I know normally at the minute we're seeing Semenyo and Tav, but if Brooks was to come in or Doak, or anybody else coming on the wings, I think that is going to be extremely key as always. It's key for their high line to trouble them from out wide. Limiting the space for someone like Foden to operate is going to be absolutely key to stop them creating. Mid block, I think you'll see we'll be doing a lot of the mid block to try and force City out wide.
Yeah.
And I think the key thing there is that we, for the likes of Adams and Scott or Christie, Cook, whoever he picks, I think that is going to be very, very key for us to get something out of the game.
Yeah.
But when you look at us going forward, well, like I say, the key players in Semenyo and Tavs, Krupi's finishing. Do you know what? I've got a good feeling, and I don't normally bet on goal scorers, to be fair, but I think at the minute everyone's going to be put a bet on Krupi scoring there because if he's given space in the box or even from outside as we saw against Forest, if he starts to run at their defence and he sees the opportunity, he's going to have a go at goal. So, clinical finishing is going to be very, very critical for us if we're going to get something out of the game. But yeah, back four as well has got to stay, strong, compact. I think possibly you may see some double marking up on Haaland. So again, whoever, like I've said earlier, whoever Andoni picks to partner Senesi this week, will be key. So yeah, I mean, Haaland, Foden, players like that, they're creative players. If we can cause them issues and be clinical on the counter attack, then there's no reason why we can't get something out of the game. And with the way our form has been at the minute, and I'm quite cautious, when we go away, like when we played Leeds recently and when we played Crystal Palace, tough games, and and I've thought about when I think about my score prediction, I'm always quite cautious. This one is going to be an interesting score prediction when we get to it.
Mm-hmm. It is going to be, and it's whether I think we are good enough to impose ourselves on Manchester City, but likewise, I think we have to play with that caution, like you've said. I'm sure that Andoni Iraola will have been watching, probably a couple of times, in fact, how Aston Villa overcome them last weekend, and thinking, how do we replicate that? How do we do that? How do we kind of match that style without leaving ourselves too open? Because Villa were excellent. Villa were really, really good. It's an interesting one. It's an interesting one. I think, is it now or never? I'm hoping that this continues this run. We are the longest unbeaten side in the Premier League now. We've unbeaten for 8 games. Of course, our only defeat coming against Liverpool. It, I'm optimistic. But I tell you what, let's find out what a Manchester City fan thinks. And it is always a pleasure to have on this show Dave from the Blue Moon podcast.
Hi guys, it's David here from the Blue Moon podcast. Just dropping in to give you some thoughts on City versus Bournemouth this weekend from a City perspective. This should be a test. This should be a real test. I think the way that Bournemouth have started this season, and I mean, I know you guys will probably have players that are you will see as more key to the performances, but just looking from the outside in. When you've got someone like Semenyo who has been creating the headlines that he's been created and putting in the performances that you that catch the eye on match of the day sort of thing, he's the sort of player that worries me for this weekend, because he's caused problems for everyone that I've seen him play against so far this season. And in terms of kind of overall form going into this one, it's tricky because City have obviously just lost at Aston Villa, and while that wasn't a great performance, the performance was okay, and it was a better performance in defeat than City's defeats against Brighton and Spurs earlier in the season. By and large, City, I mean, they also did it without Nico Gonzalez or Rodri as the holding midfielders. They've had to kind of come up with a bit of a solution for the centre of the pitch. It seems like Rodri should be available for the weekend. If he's not, it seems like Gonzalez should be able to play 90 minutes this time out. And that'll give City a bit more stability and a little bit more kind of confidence on the ball in the centre. City's whole game plan is to pin opposition teams back. They don't like a transitional game as much as this season has been, the season of set pieces and the season of big transitions and, counter-attacking football here, there and everywhere. Guardiola doesn't want that. City might have a little bit more strength in that arena now with, Phil Foden coming back to form, with the arrival of Tijani Reinders, who can carry the ball, and, the form of Jeremy Doku in particular. But by and large, Guardiola wants the team to drop deep and to stay in their own box and not be able to get out. And he was able to do that to Villa to some extent. Now, Villa had their moments and they were able to get up the pitch at times. And of course, they had a goal lead to protect, so that changes the dynamic. But in the second half, City were very much kind of in control of the ball, in control of the play, but they just couldn't create anything. They couldn't add that final pass into the mix. And it's obviously a balancing act between how much they couldn't play and how much Villa didn't let them play. But it felt very much like Villa wanted to get up the pitch and wanted possession and wanted to push City back themselves, and City just didn't let them do it. Now, that obviously isn't enough to win the game. It's not, in this occasion, it wasn't enough to get any points out of the game. But it's a much more promising sign from the problems that City were having last season, in that City could not keep possession and they couldn't force other teams to drop, and they couldn't they let games get away from them. It happened at Dean Court last season, where, in most normal circumstances, City would keep possession, pass it round, force Bournemouth to stay in their own box. You maybe have one or two opportunities to break and try and score on the counter. But that wasn't how that game planned out at all. The game last season was very much Bournemouth in control of possession and City chasing shadows. And in the end, it finished 2-1, but that was a scoreline that flattered City. So the plan again this weekend will be to make Bournemouth drop into their own box and for City to keep possession and force you back. The question is, how suited are City to doing that these days? It helps with Rodri back. It would help with Foden back in form, and I suspect Doku may come in for this one, and Savinho may drop out. But it'd be an interesting dynamic because Bournemouth, you will want the ball and you'll want to play out and step up high. And I've got a feeling Iraola will have a go kind of man to man instead of dropping deep, because it doesn't really serve a purpose for Bournemouth to drop deep in this game. We know that City have had issues trying to play against teams that go man for man. Brighton did it very successfully. Spurs did it very successfully earlier this season, and if you can cause City problems doing that, you will get opportunities. Now, obviously, the flip side to this is these days City have a big lump in goal in Donnarumma and a big lump up front in Haaland, and the middle is a little bit less of a focus, because if they've got a guy keeping it out at one end and a guy putting it in at the other, they are able to kind of have their flaws in the centre. That isn't to say that they're trying to work those, that they're not bothering about those flaws. They are trying to work them away. But in the meantime, this is kind of how City look, and I don't really feel that we've got what City's identity is yet under under the latest era of Guardiola. You go back to the Centurions and the domestic treble winners in 17, 18, 18, 19. That identity has gone. That City aren't the fast attacking team that team was. The false nine era in kind of like the early 2020s. A very patient City that had a very defined identity. Then the treble winners again had a slight. They were a lot closer to the false nine City, but had a little bit more directness about them. And I'm not really sure what this current iteration of City will look like. I am confident that Guardiola will come up with something, because I mean history says he always has done. And it does feel this season like they are building towards something, but they're building towards something that still has one or two vulnerabilities from time to time. So all that being said, that makes this game a really interesting one, because Bournemouth are not second in the table by accident. They're second in the table because they deserve to be second in the table. You've been playing some fantastic football and you've had some fantastic results. And even even knowing what happened with Liverpool in the months since the opening day. That wasn't who Liverpool were on the opening day. Liverpool were the champions, and you went to Anfield and you give them a good game, and probably were unlucky not to come away with something from that game. So I think this is going to be a real tough one. I think the fact that it's at the Etihad helps City, because going away to grounds at the moment where they come under pressure, it can be a little bit too much at times. It was at Brighton, it was at Villa. So I think City can edge it just about. If you want a score prediction, I don't think it'll be easy in the slightest, but I think City can just about get over the line 2-1. Maybe it's 2-0 and then Bournemouth make it nervy late on. Maybe Bournemouth go ahead and City have to come from behind, although City haven't actually done that yet this season. Either way, it'll be very tight, and I'm gonna say 2-1.
So there we are. That's what our good friend Dave thinks. So let us know in the comments below if you agree, disagree, or what you make of those comments. But let's have a little look at the team we have put together to face Manchester City. And here it is. Matt, talk us through it.
Well, I'm one of those that, you shouldn't really probably change a winning team. So the team, looks similar, very similar, apart from one player. I think maybe he may bring Diakite back in purely for maybe an experience, more experience than anything else, really. Against a striker like Haaland. I mean, if you remember when Milo Sakovic came in against was it Wolves he come in against, made his debut, and then when we played Newcastle he brought Diakite back in. I think it might be something similar to that. I think you may see that Milo Sakovic will head back to the bench and Diakite will come back in. Jimenez, in my opinion, man of the match against Forest, stays in. I thought defensively he was really good and attacking. Senesi and Truffert, I think they're just picking themselves in that back four at the minute. Last time we predicted Christie to come in, but obviously, he didn't. But I think against City, we are going to need, I think, someone like Alex Scott. When we win the ball in that midfield to be a bit more creative. So I think here come in alongside Adams. The three men there, Semenyo, Kluivert, Tavernier, I think have to be. I think the likes of Brooks and Gannon, Doak, Adley, could possibly come on and make an impact later on in the game. But I think to start the game, they're the three that we start with, and then obviously Krupi up top. Now, hopefully Evan Nilsson will be fit enough to come back into the bench. I think the side with Evan Nilsson involved is a much stronger one than without. But with Krupi being as clinical as he has been over the last several games, Krupi has to come in and start. So Evan Nilsson would be a great option for Andoni on the bench if he feels that he needs to shake it up like he likes to around the sort of 60th, 65th minute mark. So it just gives him more options. So hopefully Evan Nilsson is fit to be coming to come back into the team. But yeah, I mean, I don't know about yourself, but I think, I wouldn't really tweak too much with the side from Forest.
To be honest, I completely agree. I can't really say, you don't change a winning side and the side that on such a good run. The side is kind of picking itself apart from one or two players, kind of mini tweaks here or there. Krupi, you can't put Evan Nilsson straight back in. Krupi's been absolutely excellent. I've seen him compared, of course, to a Kylian Mbappe and a Thierry Henry. Pick which one ever you want, but to be compared to those players is an achievement for such a young lad. Semenyo is, of course, their number 37 for Forest actually did a very, very, very good job of marking Semenyo at the game. We've got to do the same with Haaland. If Semenyo is man marked, I think we might need to look at switching over those two front men. So Tavernier maybe go on the left-hand side for a moment, Semenyo on the right-hand side, really mix it up and pull City apart. I'm sure Justin Kluivert as well will be determined to, get something on the board as well. He's been very, very good as well. So I can't disagree with any of the changes you made. And of course, Diakite for Milosakovic does make perfect sense, but Milosakovic maybe for that height purpose, potentially.
Well, that's what I thought against Newcastle. I thought he would have kept his place purely for the height purpose, but Diakite handled his own very, very well against Voltamede. So, I mean, if I've pronounced it right, my pronunciation. Voltamade, yeah, I've heard Voltamede, I've heard so many different pronunciations of it. But, with his height, I thought it would have made sense for Milosakovic to stay in the side. But Diakite come in and handled it very, very well. So, I don't know. I just think maybe that might be a trail of thought, possibly, against Haaland, a bit more experience in that back line. But yeah, Milosakovic, when he does come in and play, he's fantastic. So if he is picked ahead of Diakite, then he's going to put in a top-notch performance. But this is just a prediction, isn't it? So
Diakite as well does read the ball as well, the trajectory of the ball. He might not be the tallest defender, but how he reads the ball and how it floats over is really, really good. It's something that a lot of Premier League defenders should learn from. And also strikers as well. How he just sees that and watches it. So, I think that kind of makes sense. That makes sense. So there we are. Let us know if you would make any changes and what your lineup would be in the comments below, as before. But I tell you what, we've got to predict this game. And bloody hell, against Manchester City. Are we going for the unthinkable? Matt, I'll let you go first.
Yeah, I'm backing us to win this one. I think there's ways that we can exploit City. We know that the dangers they've had. We've discussed some of them, and there's plenty of more that we could have discussed in the show. But I'm actually going to back us to win, and we're going to win 2-1. I think it's be hard to keep City quiet for a complete 90 minutes. So I do think we'll concede. But do you know what? At the minute, we're fearing nobody.
No, I don't think we are.
I think it's time that, it's, sides like City started to fear us, really. To be honest, it was quite interesting there to hear from
Dave.
Dave at the Blue Moon
Yeah.
podcast there, because he actually said at the beginning of what he's just told us, this is a real challenge, and it's really good to hear from a fan of a very, very successful side over the last sort of 10 years, plus, who have won, back-to-back Premier Leagues and, trebles and everything. It's really nice to hear from a fan that they're expecting a real challenge. So that's filled me with confidence as well to hear that. So, yeah, for me, 2-1.
Wow. Well, you have got more right than you've got wrong this season. So I hope you're right, and I hope I'm wrong again. I'm going to be a little bit more conservative, and I'm going to go a 1-1 draw.
Wow.
I think Haaland will get on the score sheet, and I think that man Semenyo will as well. It'll be a real battle. A real good game for the neutrals. We might have to ride our luck a couple of times, and hopefully City will have to ride their luck a couple of times. But I'm hoping we can edge it, and you're right and I'm wrong again.
Yeah, let's hope so. But to be fair, if we get a point, I think everybody would be happy with that. Okay, it would be an excellent point at City. But I just full of a bit of confidence this week. So with how we played against Forest and in our build up to throughout this season, and seeing us second in the league, and seeing someone like Sunderland there as well, could this again be the year of an underdog?
We're dreaming now, aren't we?
This is it.
Hey, if we beat Manchester City, when Leicester beat Manchester City, it was at that point where I thought it might happen. If we beat Manchester City, could the whole of the country just wake up and go, this could actually happen again? Honestly, I'd have to pinch myself. If we got anywhere close to that. Being in Europe, it would be amazing enough. Hey, let's just keep dreaming the dream. What an incredible story that would be. That would actually, sorry, Chris, that would eclipse what Leicester did.
yeah. But let's keep our feet a little bit on the ground at the minute. Let's see how we do Sunday.
Well, there we are. That is our thoughts. Let us know your thoughts in the comments. Can AFC Bournemouth beat Manchester City? Of course we can. We're going to win the bloody league. Here we go. Man City are coming to a side in the Champions League places. Well, we're going to their place, but having a visit from a side in the Champions League places, they're just down in fifth. Guys, thank you again for joining us. Up the Cherries. We'll see you in the next one. Come on, lads.
Talksport Fan Network.
The ultimate on-demand destination for the UK's best fan-led football podcasts.
Want authentic supporter insight on all things Bournemouth? Follow Up the Cherries in all departments on the Talksport Fan Network.
Club-dedicated content created by the fans, for the fans.
Search Talksport Fan Network.